Well, a source is telling the Washington Post that the person allegedly behind the massive Pentagon intelligence leak worked on a military base and shared the documents with a group of friends online. Here's a member of that group.
He is not a Russian operative. He's not a Ukrainian operative. I'll go as far to say he's not even on the east side of the world. Any claims that he is a Russian operative or pro-Russian is categorically false. He is not interested in helping any foreign agencies with their attack on the U.S. or other countries.
He says the person behind the leak goes by the initials OG. The hundreds of classified documents were posted in an online chat room on Discord, a platform popular with gamers. Joining me now is the Common Sense Society executive editor, Chris Bedford. Christopher, good to see you this morning. What do you make of this story?
Well, it's symptomatic of something that we've actually seen a couple times now, which is people looking for community online. And that's if it's true. It looks like the Washington Post has two sources saying this is where the documents came from. Folks who were very lonely during the pandemic, folks who kind of live on the internet, folks looking for some kind of reassurances and self-esteem and sharing secrets because of that. This guy who was basically trying to impress his friends with some of the access to different things he had. So far, it looks like the Ukrainians aren't going to react. They don't really have a choice. They need American alliance in this war. They can't just say, well, we're no longer going to work with the Americans. But it's a scary thing. It's just another example of how much regular guys who work in military bases have access to secrets that they could cause damage with. And
obviously are angry about something and want to do something to hurt the U.S. Right? I mean, this has a negative impact.
Yeah, but it's a question whether or not he was actually trying to hurt the United States or just appear cool in front of his friends. That seems to be the takeaway that these other gamers on this small Discord chat had, was that most of them didn't seem to even really know exactly what he was sharing. That young gamer who was interviewed there said that he was one of the only people he thinks who even read the stuff. But this guy was just showing it and saying, "Hey, look at all this cool stuff I have access to.
I see.
I know the secrets civilians don't know."
Okay, so then that's what this is about. Meanwhile, 24 GOP lawmakers are demanding answers after Walter Reed Military Hospital sent a cease and desist letter to Catholic priests saying that they want them to stop providing care. In a letter to Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin, Republicans write this: forcing priests to stop providing care during Holy Week is not only morally wrong, but also a violation of the First Amendment. Chris, your thoughts?
I first started getting messages from veteran friends on this on Holy Saturday. This is right in the middle of the holiest season of the year for Christians. And for Walter Reed to say that they were giving away a contract that had previously belonged to Franciscan priests to a secular contractor, according to the military chaplaincy, it was to save money. We don't know all the details yet, is absolutely atrocious. And I think it's part of a broader culture that you see. These orders don't come down from the top in the Biden administration, but there is a culture there where someone, earlier this week, a transgender activist who attacked a woman, attacked a police officer, destroyed a statue of Mary, and vandalized the Catholic Church. The DOJ recommended 0 charges. You have this story going on. Across the board, there are just anti-Catholic things going on in this administration, and folks feel completely empowered in the administration to do that sort of thing. So I'm glad this is getting the attention of Congress to crack back.
Yeah. Jonathan Madison.
Good morning, Mr. Bedford. This year alone, I've heard a report that at least 69 acts of hostility have been perpetrated against the church. And from my vantage point, it appears that the left is doing absolutely nothing to address it. So my concern is that we have a culture that has basically been putting in a position to cancel church culture, Catholicism, any kind of church movement you could think of. They've been doing it before Christ, after Christ. They're still doing it, but particularly since Biden took office, they're doing it even more. And so my question to you is, what can we do? What can American Christians out there do? What can American Catholics out there and the like do to sort of put a stop to this movement, advocate for our rights, and make sure the left understands we have rights too?
Yeah, since about 2016, these attacks have been going up massively all over the country. Attacks on sanctuaries, people stealing the host, people spray painting everything from St. Patrick's Cathedral right around the street from the studio all the way to just local churches, shooting them with bullets. And they're not regarded by politicians generally as hate crimes, even when they're openly saying we hate Catholics and spray painting things like that. They're designed to target members of a community and intimidate a broader community, and politicians have been afraid to say anything. So local Catholics and voters and Christians and concerned people should push their politicians to do things. But also there are things that we've been doing in our local community when there have been threats to those young women who volunteer at the pregnancy crisis centers or volunteer their time to go out there and maybe stand guard or be with them and make sure that they're safe in their places, or when the local priests ask the Knights of Columbus to come up and stay with them during holy hours in case there's some kind of disturbance, just to be a presence. Because a lot of these folks, they don't like the light. They absolutely hate the light. They enjoy the darkness. And just being a presence there can deter a lot of this aggression.
Yeah, wow, incredible. I wanted to switch gears, get your take on Joe Biden in Ireland. Police in Northern Ireland are confirming that there was a security breach around President Biden's trip. A document reportedly containing details of officer deployments in Belfast was found on the street. President Biden is traveling with some of his family in Ireland, who gave a shout out. He gave a shout out to them yesterday. Watch this.
I'm here with my sister Valerie and my youngest son Hunter Biden. Stand up, guys. I'm proud of you.
Yeah, all of this, Christopher, as a former Obama administration stenographer, is coming forward. He says that the FBI ignored his tips about President Biden's involvement in Hunter Biden's business dealings. Once again, influence peddling in plain sight, Christopher. This stenographer has been out talking about all of this experience, that he was right there on the ground hearing President Biden talk about Ukraine and Hunter's dealings, even as the president said he knew nothing about it. Your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, this is an important anniversary for Ireland, for America, and especially at a really tenuous time in Irish relations because of the Brexit deal and what's going to happen next. And I can see the urge to want to bring your son who's never been to Ireland. But once your son has embarrassed you, and once your son's been implicated in corruption because of official trips you took as vice president to China, et cetera, that son's got to be grounded. Doesn't matter how old they are. It's a terrible look to bring that son on an international trip when there's that many throwing accusations. And Joe Biden and the White House have been explicit to try and deny anything, to say this has got nothing to do with the president. But the evidence that you've documented basically every morning in the show keeps on piling up that more people knew, more members of this family may have benefited. And I think the scandal will eventually come to light. I doubt anyone will ever be held accountable, but we'll know all the facts by the end of it.
Yeah, you're being very generous, as if it's a Hunter Biden story. This is a Joe Biden story. Anybody he was dealing with wanted access to Joe Biden, the vice president. And we still don't know what all this money that they took in was paying them for. But here's that stenographer. Watch this.
Joe Biden knew Hunter Biden was already on the board on April 18th. Joe Biden knew. He directed Sullivan to go back and talk to the press. This is a conspiracy. This is a crime. This is public corruption.
Chris, he's talking about Sullivan. Jake Sullivan at the time was in the PR department for the vice president. He went back on the plane to talk to the reporters who were in the back of the plane. The stenographer was there. Your thoughts on how damaging the stenographer whistleblower is now?
It's just another important piece of evidence, and a Mount Everest-sized pile of evidence that implicates the president in a kind of a culture here of corruption. We look at this, how Amtrak Joe went to mean one of the poorest members of the U.S. Senate to a very wealthy man with multiple homes. Well, you can look around and look at some of those dealings.
Yeah, for sure. Chris, thanks very much for weighing in on all of that. Christopher Bedford joining us.